history as we work to grow the economy out of a challenging battle with COVID-19. COVID-19 represents now an existential battle, if you will. And you look at the news of recent vintage. You hear what is happening in England. England under lockdown. England experiencing a new strain of COVID-19. And almost every country now saying, let's keep those English people at bay. So Italy has imposed a restriction on flights to and from the UK. And several other countries have done so, including Canada. And the lovely trade drive that provided ease of access between member states as it relates to the UK, a pause has been put on that at least until the Christmas season is over. Don't you marvel at how fortunate we are here in St. Kitts and Nevis? By the grace of God, we can stand here, have a parliamentary debate, we can have VAT days, because our country is being run well. And I want to commend all the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis for their support. The vast majority of people understand that COVID-19 is a disease. And none of them want to get this disease. Indeed, if you see what is happening and you pay attention, you understand that over 1 million persons have been killed by the COVID-19. So I want to encourage every citizen and resident to abide by the protocols from the Ministry of Health. It is not over until the fat lady sings. And even in the context of the advent of the vaccine, the fat lady not ready to sing a goodbye song. And so we have to continue doing those things. We are doing so nicely in the Parliament today, wearing our masks, social distancing to the extent practicable, and all of those other things, the hand hygiene to keep our country safe. I mentioned the situation in the UK because all day yesterday and today I get in WhatsApp from afar commendation for the leadership of the country at this time. Commendation for keeping the country safe, because persons are able to make the contrast between what is happening in big, powerful countries and what is not happening there. And they compare that to our excellent, not perfect, but an excellent record so far at keeping our people safe. Mr. Speaker, the objectives of our 2021 budgetary provisions were well laid out, but in wrapping up, they bear some repeating. The budget, Mr. Speaker, is intended to boost economic growth by its support to critical growth drivers of agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and construction. It provides the impetus in areas of marijuana, production, cultivation, etc., and entertainment as potential new drivers of socio-economic activity in our country. It is a budget, of course, of fiscal expansion, but we have not done it in the reckless Douglas way. It takes into account the capacity of our people to deliver in an orderly manner a finite number of projects successfully. How many projects can our Public Works Department and those to whom it subcontracts really do. Those were the thought processes that went into determining, for example, what capital projects properly should go in and what should go out. And in the Director of Auditors report, she made mention to the fact that greater care has to be exercised in terms of the capital budget, and that those items in the capital budget should really only go in once they realistically could be implemented in the relevant year of consideration. And so if you're talking about building a school and you're putting that in the budget, you must ensure you already have the designs, you're ready to go before you put that in the budget. And it is good advice to the extent that you don't want to have an crowding out of projects that are ready for action by those which are nice to have but not yet ready. And this is part of what the Estimates Committee work is to assist with. Mr. Speaker, I was at pains during the presentation of the former Minister of Finance, the ex-Prime Minister and member for number 6, to remind him that this budget is an annual budget, not a 5-year budget. This wasn't like a budget he presented a year ago, saying all that he will do in 5 years. In our budgetary system, we present a budget every year, and we therefore give the country a realistic guide of where we will be 12 months hence. And we will continue, Mr. Speaker, our practical responses to the times in which we are in. Mr. Speaker, we had a song and dance from the opposition leader about growth, fiscal expansion. People have to be looked after. And clearly he did not read the budget. It seems to me, long before the budget was presented, he had his friend write a script for him, and they did not get a chance to update it after the budget was presented. And it's a shame that that could have happened. Because, Mr. Speaker, I just outlined, which friend? A friend from Antigua, Lyman Overdrafter, a talker. The budget clearly outlined the objectives early on, and of course, growth was a critical part of what we targeted. Indeed, had the opposition leader taken the time, he would have recognized that of our capital project, comprises 113 actionable programs. 113. 60 of these will directly involve construction, with an injection of $111.9 million being spent on physical works. This, of course, represents increased opportunities for jobs and money in the pockets of the small and big businesses and those persons who ply their trade here in our local economy. Never before has so much been delivered to our people. Mr. Speaker, one could have reasonably expected that the opposition leader would have risen to the occasion, recognizing that this is a crisis, and he would have refrained from opposing for opposition's sake. And at times, he struggled to do that. At times, I felt a pity for him, because it was as if there was a good side of Douglas and a bad side of Douglas. And when the good side do the right thing to say, well, this budget is good, the bad side come back and say, Douglas, how could you say that? And so he create a confusion in his presentation. The bad side and the good side at odds with one another in the presentation of Douglas. And you see it through the presentations of the members opposite. A struggle to do the right thing. A struggle to exude the patriotism at this time of national crisis. A struggle to say that the government is on the right track when everyone in the country knows that the government is. At last, the Douglas Labour can't change its stripe. Same old party, same old ideas, same old leader. No transition from the old to the next generation. And it is really sad that that is what the great party has now been reduced to. They haven't learned. And that is unfortunate too, because we have seen the sad, almost premature ending of the political careers of Comrades Marcella Liebert, Comrade Convis Maynard, Comrade Patrice Nisbet. And you would have thought after all of that, you would have had some retrospection and prospection coming from that party. But not so. Not so. Because 10 men in one will ensure that no new idea would come to the fore. And the Deputy Prime Minister pointed to the irony, perhaps the hypocrisy, that while they were touting next gen, they were being led by an old gen who controlled the party machinery and all of the ideas. And one of the things that old gen knows is how to sidelight them. We had one Convis then. We had one Patrice. We had one Marcella. And when they made their presentation the wrong way and you tried to correct them, the member for number 6 would intervene. You're doing a good job. Go on. Nice point. And he pounded the table and set them up. And when someone asked him one day how you could be in the parliament encouraging Marcella and Convis in that kind of behavior, he said those young Turks need to be learned a lesson. Alas, on June 5th, they learned the lesson from the people of St. Kitts at Nevis. They refuse? But you see, Mr. Speaker, and it's amazing, you know. It's amazing. Because look, a couple Sundays ago, they had an election show at the Marriott in this COVID time. And you tell me that they go over to Marriott after the member for number 6 has had 2 disappointing showing at general elections, and they put back the same member to lead the party. No transition. And none of them would dare to stand up to him. Not Dr. Jew, not the member for number 1, none of them. Because he told Dr. Neville Douglas, and he believes it to his heart, that he doesn't believe in transition. Duncan, Neville Duncan. He said that he prefers to die in his political boots than to bring and to buy in. Buy it. So, Mr. Speaker, we saw that being acted out over at the Marriott. Mr. Speaker, this budget, which we have been debating over the last couple of days, is comprehensive. And it has a larger focus on people and growth and development and the future. The future in terms of the resilience, the innovation, and the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. We see this reflected, of course, in our programs for alternative energy, about which the Deputy Prime Minister spoke, our human resource and skills development, our emphasis in technical vocation, our emphasis on the refinement of the rule of law, to which the Attorney General spoke, our ambition, of course, to have a passport that commands the attention and the visa-free acceptance of the most countries in the world. Importantly, this budget protects the poor and the indigent with a range of social safety nets, costing this country over $50 million. And when the member for number 6 had the brass face to say that we had not provided sufficiently for the poor, I say that he had not read the budget well. And I indicated to him that our social safety net was so broad and comprehensive, it could not be found in just one ministry. You had to look across a range of ministry to get a sense of the ambit, the latitude and spread of our comprehensive social safety net, which the Financial Secretary has said is one of the best anywhere in the region. Our poverty alleviation program has been such an innovation, and so many persons were pleased by the compassion of the government in bringing aside this program. We have put $28.8 million in that. For support of the Sadler Senior Citizens Home, we have $76,000 allocated. Social assistance to the poor and needy, $2 million. The New Horizon Rehab Center in Harrison, his constituency, at $2 million. The Alternative Lifestyle Pathway Program, $10 million. The waiver and water bills, nearly $1 million. The waiver and electricity bills, near $500,000. Our program of support to the parents of children into the early childhood education centers, costing the country $1.5 million. And that is not all. Other social safety net programs, like our free dental care treatment for our students, our elderly, they come at a cost, Mr. Speaker. And I had some very interesting statistics about the support we were giving in health in these particular areas, Mr. Speaker, which perhaps later I will pay some attention to. What about the free treatment as part of our community health and primary care? What about our free primary education? All those not included in the $50 million to which I referred to. This budget, Mr. Speaker, goes further to incentivize businesses. Hence, our small and large businesses are to benefit from a 50% reduction in the unincorporated business taxes from 4% to 2%, and a 24% reduction in corporation taxes from 33% to 25%. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the security of our people is assured by the $86.2 million we have allocated here, and we gave agriculture one of the largest allocations it has had in many years to take us closer to food security. That is why we ask, who prepared the talking points for the members opposite, so that they should come to the Parliament and made such a poor job of reflecting on the 2021 budget. I think that the member for number 6 really ought to apologize to the senior officials in the Ministry of Finance in particular for describing their hard work, and indeed the hard work of all the senior officials, the permanent secretaries in the various ministries, as being fraudulent. Describing the budget as a fraud, Mr. Speaker, I believe that he owes an apology to the people. But of course, the same pejorative regarding creative accounting is really because he doesn't understand how a budget is composed. And it is embarrassing because he has been the longest serving Minister of Finance. And some of the remarks that were made by him, we could well accept them reluctantly coming from a new member, not versed in the art of governance and the way the government accounting does. Clearly, the member was reflecting sour grapes. Sour grapes, sour lala, we would say in the good old days. Sour lala. A good budget that lifts up the citizens and residents of the country. A good budget that protects our security interests. A good budget that speaks to farmers and fishers, even in a time of COVID, the worst pandemic in a lifetime. And they can't be brave enough, Mr. Speaker, to speak well of it, constructively criticizing it, as others would have done, Mr. Speaker, and show the country at large that the old Labour Party still has some relevance, Mr. Speaker. And it was really unfortunate that the member for number 6 should be the one in the Parliament introducing the descriptor of fraud. Because here it is, in my view. If there was fraud in the Parliament, we had to look frontally at the member for number 6. This is a member who a High Court described as unsuited to sit in our Parliament. Because what? Unknowing to us in here, he held the diplomatic passport of another country, purporting that he was solely in commitment to St. Kitts and Nevis, while carrying the passport of another country, in this case, Dominica. And he knew it was wrong. So every time he got up while carrying that passport, he was living a lie. He was an imposter in the Parliament. He was a fraud in the Parliament. Every vote, every presentation was reduced to a nullity, void and of no effect, and should never be resurrected in the parliamentary answer, if there is one. Disqualified to be ejected out of the Parliament. I wouldn't be so unkind to use his words to the member for number 8. Eject him out of Parliament like a common criminal, he said in 2015. Look what he had done. Lived a falsehood, and the people of number 6 live a lie, going outside And as soon as he hit Antigua, he put aside the St. Kitts and Nevis passport in his pocket. He takes out his Dominican passport. He takes a charter, go to the country that he loves more than St. Kitts and Nevis. He comes when he was caught. Well, Timothy Harris has one too. And create that fraud of a passport purporting to be of my image and likeness. And he comes back to the parliament, get a reprieve from the people of number 6, and come back without shame really to making those kind of judgments on the good people. He spoke, Mr. Speaker, in his usual excitable way about the indebtedness of the country. And I formed the conclusion, when there are certain debates in the parliament, the leader of the opposition should be silent. Least said, the better. Because he cannot be the face of rebuttal coming from an opposition, giving his shady pass. When he speaks about debt, and it's sweet him, hear him, no money there. No money there. He would wish that no money was there in this country. But we're not spending like a drunken sailor. Not spending like a drunken sailor. So if you think no money there, sufficient money there. It's just that I'm not spending it badly. But who should be talking about that? It couldn't be the member of parliament who has the dubious distinction of being the first Minister of Finance and the first Prime Minister to take St. Kitts and Nevis a begging for a loan. An extraordinary bailout of $225 million. Never before. No money to pay civil servants. And no COVID. No money to buy toilet paper up JNF. No money to pay the drain cleaners. Had to go a begging with a group called the O Company out of UK to get the IMF to do a bailout. And then he came to make a presentation on the budget at a time of a crisis which he knows. Because in his opening remarks, he admitted and conceded he had never seen a time like this. One truth he would have told them, for there is no template. No a prime minister alive has dealt with the issue of a crisis of this nature. And without a template, relying on the ingenuity, the creativity of our own people, we have been able to keep St. Kitts and Nevis alive, Mr. Speaker. And no debts so far, and we give God thanks for that kind of work that we have been able to do here. $225 million borrowed, and no pandemic. No pandemic, but he needed that amount of money. $225 million he borrowed, but he still imposed a VAT at the highest introductory rate in the region at 17%. No pandemic, global or local, but $225 million borrowed. And VAT, 17%. And electricity goes up 85%. And water goes up 600%. He even introduced a foot tax to go to Nevis. So bad it was. So bad it was. How dare he comes now to chastise us about a loan which we project will be 50 million if things do not improve. but better days are coming. That is why next year the brewery is increasing their production. That is why next year they are running 24-hour shift. That is why next year they are spending $3 million to build new facilities, offices and labs and warehouses, because they have done so well. So well, and importantly, the wellness has come in large part too from an expansion of their activities in foreign markets. I feel good about that. It means that we are competing. It means that we are better than several of the other brewers located elsewhere. So that is great news for our people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Not only was he concerned, Mr. Speaker, about this borrowing, and he's a bad example. He doesn't even know when to borrow. He then went on to have other pejorative comments regarding the budget. And of course, some of the members opposite, well, there are only two. They came like say after me. And so whatever the leader says, wrong or right, they have to say. Because this leader don't make joke with those young turfs who have to be put in their place and be taught a lesson. So we heard from the senator opposite the issue of politicization. Few people here know that the senator opposite headed the Department of Constituency Empowerment. And she took the lead action in giving out the political handouts in the 2015 elections. The employees were largely the foot soldiers of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party going into the 2015 elections. The vehicles of the department were decorated with the banners of the Labour Party. They come here thinking they're talking nice, thinking they are fooling us with their theatrics about empowerment. What empowerment? That's not a new word. That has been what this government has been practicing from day one. Empowerment. That is why we introduced a Fresh Start program. Empowerment. That is why we began a serious skill training program. Not like the one on the PEP. Not like the one on the PEP. 4,000 persons. And the best idea, whenever the Labour Party was going to have a function, the leader of PEP said, put on the red shirt today. This is red shirt day. The leader for PEP sits in the parliament. And they had their red shirt day. I mean, one employee in the office of PEP told me that she was so mad. One Friday they went and they said, we are going to a funeral. We all must put on red shirts. Part of it was to elevate the support for Labour Party. So that when people see all these red in town, they say, bye, Team Unity gonna get close. But God is good. 2015 came and they lost the general elections because the people saw through the falsehood and the disempowerment. Disempowerment that was part of the PEP program. When the CDP consultant came in to look at the program, the CDP consultant condemned it. They could not believe that so few persons on the program were being trained. The Deputy Prime Minister read in this Parliament before the finding that of over 4,000 persons on the PEP program, it was just about 114 persons that had some form of adequate training. And they come in the Parliament as if they are new wine. We are the next trend. Deception. Deception. New wine in the old bottle of Douglasism. New wine in the old philosophy of deception. New wine. New generation with the old generation leader. Contradiction. That is what we have had here, Mr. Speaker, in the Honourable House, as they attempt to undermine the good work of the government. Yes, they operated PIP like the political arm. Money is given here and there. The friends get a job to do, some so-called training. The ghost workers being paid on the program. The Internal Audit Department did a review of that. And I will have at some point to bring that into the House to discuss it. We have to discuss the fact that over $3 million worth of business went to the family of a senior official in the PEP program. That is how they did it. Over $3 million of business. Do this, do that. Out of Miami, out of Florida, out of anywhere. And they come now to say that there is something new, making a pretense in the Parliament that they now are virtuous persons wanting an opportunity. Who else but someone who believes in the failed philosophy of Douglasism comes to the Parliament as a teacher and says, you know, I have won my seat 3 times. I'm a 3-time parliamentarian, 3 terms. Young persons out there in the community concerned. They didn't know that their teacher had won 3 elections. But that is Douglas's arithmetic. Only remember for number 6, he's a genius at these things, you know. By the time he lost the case, he said, I won 90% of the case. He won 90% of the case, and then he appealed. Understand? He won the case, and he appealed the case that he won. Understand? This man, it's not easy, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, we hear his concern about crime. And his concern in particular about the peace initiative. And again in his own excitable way. He says, but the man come to the Parliament, Mr. Speaker. I gave him support for 12 million, a good program. I never know that this thing going to continue again next year. 31 million. Wow. Drama, theatrics. And he well knows that this is untrue. Careful reading of the budget as outlined by the Deputy Prime Minister would have reflected, far from increasing the allocation, we have reduced the allocation by some 17%. Far from 31 million, the provision was for $10 million. And then you ask, but why did he take this matter up to be the one advocating about it? Why not at least allow the new member for St. Christopher I to try a thing and to debate that particular point? Perhaps when they were giving out the script as to who will speak, the member for St. Christopher I came late. I don't know. But it couldn't be Dr. Douglas. It couldn't be, respectfully, the member for number 6. Because he has been the longest serving Minister of National Security in our country, or at least one of them. Under his watch, the crime situation went from bad to worse. Bad to worse. When Jean was growing up, his grandma would have said, "He gone wassara." Gone wassara under the member for number 6. From bad to worse is more elegant. But the graphic nature of wassara from the grandmother speak volumes in helping us understand the man opposite. That is what it is. Had the member for number 6 acted responsibly and seriously as a Minister of National Security, the Deputy Prime Minister's point would have been so valid, has been so valid, there would be no need for peace initiative. It was the failure of policy initiatives over a prolonged period of time that saw violence in the country took root. It was the failure of the policies of the member opposite that saw homicide in the country raise its ugly head, raised and escalated from about 2 in 1993 to 36 in 2011. It was under his watch that we had multiple killings on the strip. It was under his watch that our streets became unsafe. And he knew it. But he told us, "I don't bother," said the member opposite, when they talk about crime. "I don't take it on," he said in his usual style. "Talking about crime is like water on my back. It run off." And the people, he had an old lady there from St. Paul. She laughed the loudest in the crowd. So Douglas went on, in the words of Jean's grandmother, "Wassara." So he went on. "I ain't send them to kill nobody. If they want to kill, let it go ahead. Nobody can tell me about that."
I cannot accept that because the member opposite is definitely misleading this House and this nation. I've had no comment of that kind at any time. It has to be withdrawn, Mr. Speaker, with respect.
Honourable Member for number 7. The Honourable Member for number 6 is asking that you withdraw the statement. I believe it has to do with
Comment from the galleries in the worst.
Honourable Members, persons in the gallery, even at my distance from the gallery, I would have distinctly heard a comment from the gallery, which is completely and utterly unacceptable. I can immediately have that person identified and ejected from the gallery. I will allow that one incident to pass, and that one incident alone. No other incident of that nature will be tolerated. We know the rules. With respect to the point of order, Honourable Member for number 7, the member for number 6 has said he has never, I guess, uttered those words, so I'm going to ask you to withdraw.
Mr. Speaker, I want the debate to go, and this is part of the delaying tactic. So I would withdraw that statement. I have to sympathize with him because he's not at his best in terms of memory. But if you were to go through the gallery, person by person, everyone would tell you, yes, he did echo these words. But in interest of moving forward, my grandmother taught me, sometimes you have to take the wrong to make right. And to make it right in the Parliament, Mr. Speaker, I would withdraw this statement and I would excuse his poor memory at this particular moment in time. Because the substance of the point remains that he failed as a Minister of National Security to handle crime and violent crime in our country. And his response was reactive. Nothing proactive, nothing new, same old untried ideas. Same old ideas. He went, Mr. Speaker, he persuaded the cabinet to bring an anti-crime act. An anti-crime act, so he knew there was a gang. Sorry, an anti-gang act. He knew there was a gang problem in the country. And he passed the act as a show. Not one person. He accepted that the country was in a war zone. He passed an anti-gang act acknowledging that there were gangs, inter-gang and intra-gang warfare in the country. He never persecuted one person. Not one. Not one. It was part of the bravado, the show. He became paralyzed by his own inaction as a Minister of National Security. In contrast, we came to government acknowledging that crime was a problem. Indeed, we couldn't ignore it. On election day, at the polling booth in Connery, guns went off. One gentleman died as a reminder that the 2015 general elections had to be about law and order. It was a wake-up call. By the time we had taken office, by the 22nd of February, we had 9 homicides already in the country. You extrapolate that, you are looking at near 50 homicides by the end of the year. Nothing, because it was water on his back which just ran off, Mr. Speaker. We came and we took some bold initiative. We brought in the Bramshill advisors, reorganized the police force into various directorates of crime, of arts, and so on and so the like, to try to change the culture. We brought in experts in evidence gathering to teach and to help. And we had them here. We did some novel things, blocking off the roads. Never tried before, Mr. Speaker, with any serious way. And importantly, we brought the Alternative Lifestyle Pathway Program, dubbed the Peace. Because you can't put a price on peace. You can't put a price on lives. And every life that we can save, we are to give it our best effort, Mr. Speaker. And this is what we have done. Part of the reason that the country is no longer talking about crime and violence is because Team Unity's response has been powerful and has been successful. So our streets are safe again. We still have a journey to go. But it is better, so much better than under the former administration. We can take pride in our success. And while they're out there making a mockery of the program, the law enforcement agencies, up to I think last week, Mr. Brandy, our Commissioner of Police, and a virtual meeting with law enforcement officials all over the globe, including America. They have invited him to come to California to make a presentation on the success of the peace initiative in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Brandy went to Barbados to a regional engagement of law enforcement officers put on by the British government to share with them our success in this particular initiative. A bold new initiative. It took courage, yes, to try something new. Takes courage, but it has paid the dividend, peace dividend, in a short while. And I will be the first to admit that we are not yet out of the woods. The program is but yet young. So we need to persevere with it. Stamina, yes. We need to persevere, tweak it as we understand it better. I want here to commend the young people who came forward and said too much crime and criminal activities in our country. We want to help. I want to thank the young school teacher who came forward to be part of the initial engagement team. I want to thank the counselor who came forward. I want to thank the pastor who was part of the initial engagement team. I want to thank the banker who was part of the initial engagement team. I want to thank ACP Adams and Brown MacArthur for being part of the initial engagement team. I want to thank our National Security Advisor for being part of the initial engagement team, and all others who, until that chapter is written, shall remain nameless for security and other reasons. But nationals and residents, just a few, came together, put themselves at risk, engaged with dialogue with our sons and our daughters who are impacted by violence in the country, and came up with a model that has now become best practice. And everywhere, people are asking and calling to learn more about how they can adopt our program. Yes, for us, the peace program is about redeeming lives. It's about consecrating our future, because the future is all that we have. The former regime is already the past. The past could be described, and one writer did in fact describe it. The past is our grandfather's curse. Only the future of peace, prosperity, love, and unity, we have to consecrate. That is why we have a peace program. Out of the ashes of the atrocious killings and mayhem in the country, we can create something better. An environment that allows our young men at risk to be transformed, acculturated and reintegrated in our society. They will come now as employers, self-employed persons, businessmen, counselors, and so forth, assisting us in the maintenance of peace. And I want to commend the Ministry of Education. There was a young man from St. Paul's who had been convicted. The Ministry of Education took him out of that past, put him in the Charles E. Mills Secondary School, and he was one of the best teachers in natural sciences in that school. People can be redeemed. It is for us in the society, the all of society approach, helping them, guiding them. And when you begin to engage them, you will be surprised that these so-called at-risk men, these so-called former criminals, they are no different than any of us, but for the grace of God. all of us on the road to Damascus. And then we had the moment when we saw the light. You talk to them, they're talking about their sons, their daughters, their children, their mothers. They now want to be there for them, to give their children the life that they had been denied, the love, the attention, the guidance. So we have Shahid Williams of St. Paul's, who from that past had become a teacher, had become a farmer. And I was so pleased to have been able to use the STEP program to allow him to get a couple more hands to work his farms. These were the persons who the member opposite didn't have time for. They for him was like water on the horse's back. Let it run off. Ignore it. What he said? Duck back. You heard that, Mr. Speaker? That was what he said. The duck back. We are giving our young people a chance. We are empowering them to be the best that they can be. And many of them, Mr. Speaker, having reconnected to a free society again, they will not return to the prison of gang life in the foreseeable future. Many of them, you engage them, they tell you, not me. I don't want to go back there. Many of them, even in prison, are preparing to take their life to a higher level of engagement. In the prison now are persons with 12 CXC subjects. And you wonder how our young men could achieve so much behind bars. And in the breadth of St. Kitts and Nevis, they would have achieved nothing, Mr. Speaker. Right now, we have 2 inmates. They have done CXC, CSEC. They have done CAPE, high passes, distinctions. They are asking the government, please sponsor us on to university. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. They have emerged now as future leaders. Yes, they have incurred the wrath of society, but we are seeing transformation. We are such a small society. We really can't afford to lose anyone. And that is why the redemption song must be loud in the country as we give people a chance to develop, a chance to rehabilitate, a chance to be themselves. They are going to be the leaders that are going to help prevent the next generation from making the same mistakes that they would have done. So I say commendation to the Ministry of Education. An ex-convict in the schools. But all the teachers love him. All the students love him because they have seen a change. And we want to do more of that. Not only the government should, but the entire society. The entire society. The businesses must allow them an opportunity for an alternative pathway, or else we are pushing them back from whence they came. When you see them in particular businesses, Lord, don't go cuss them. Don't call the employer aside and say, Lord, them there, you got in them in our buying here. You don't want that. We want a buy-in into the second chance program. And it struck me one Juve morning down on the Bay Road with the Ambassador Ian Patch's library. A lady came, she pulled me aside and she said, Dr. Harris, a long time I want to see you. I said, why? She said, let me tell you this. I hear Douglas talk. And Douglas say, you pay people for peace. don't bother with him. She said, don't bother with him. Whatever you're doing, continue to do it. And then she told me why. She said, I had a son. My son was shot dead. And up to this morning, I could tell you, Dr. Harris, I haven't gotten over it. Please continue to save the lives of people. That's a decent woman. That's a mother. That's a real mother carrying the grief. And you count up, I used to hear the Deputy Prime Minister give account. Nearly 300 young men killed under the Douglas regime. How many mothers are grieving? How many children are grieving? How many anger children we have out there as a consequence of the failure of the past regime to do something bold and to do something different, Mr. Speaker. And when I talk about the peace, it is those real-life stories of the resident in East Bastia who said, carry along. Do not bother with Mr. Douglas. She can't bear the thought of another mother, another sister suffering the agony and trauma. When someone dies to violence, the entire society suffers. The victim suffers real death or wounding. The perpetrator suffers, and the families on both sides are in turmoil. No winners, all losers. And that is why we continue. I was on a flight to Miami. I sat by a lady who was returning back to the USA, a national. Didn't know her, but she knew me so well. I trying to talk along and hope at some point in the conversation, all of us being there, you hope you get to know who they really was. So we talk and we talk. When I catch myself, she was one of the Greens from West Bastia. She was living in the US for a very long time. And she told me, similar message, that peace program must continue. She said she used to feel ashamed with the regularity with which her friends from the Caribbean would call when Dr. Denzel Douglas was Prime Minister to ask her what was happening in small St. Kitts with the killing after killing and the shooting after shooting. She said she doesn't know how we're doing it. Whatever we are doing, continue. Continue. And that is why the program is continuing in 2021. And when the member opposite says he thought that the peace would have done in 2020, Mr. Speaker, they came in here and I gave them support. I never heard him supported the program. But in this house he said that I supported the program for $12 million. And now they want to carry it up to $31 million. Nothing like that. Mr. Speaker, we're really hoping that from peace we can instill a new season of hope in our people, Mr. Speaker. Hope. From peace to hope. Harnessing opportunities for peace and entrepreneurship by helping our people to excel through the enhancement of their life skills and the pursuance of peace and gainful engagement. The peace program is not just about people employed, getting a job. It is about helping them to give another person a job, helping them to help themselves. I was surprised. You have not confronted them. You have not seen their capacity like I have up close. They have come to my office. They have sat down. They have spoken to me. And I couldn't believe When you see some of the young person who are involved in this program, your daughter could bring them in your house and you ain't know. There's no difference between them in temperament, in behavior, than any other citizen and resident. Remind me of the time at the Prime Minister's gala over Jakarta, where some of those prisoners were dancing with Sir Edmund's daughter, and it became a big thing after. It reminded me how these things can happen unknown to you. But I was impressed when a young man from Sandy Point came and he said, I just need some help. And this is a person with about 8 or 10 subjects, son. He has a shop which he inherited from a family member, and he wanted support to, as it were, stock out his shop. If you were to go to any of the traditional commercial banks and look at his record, they will rip up his application. He would not have been given a chance. And we said that we will not leave any person behind. And the only bank that would help was the Development Bank. The Development Bank was conceived to do those very things, to intervene in the financial sector, to support government policy initiative. It is the single largest provider of student loans. Years go back, none of those banks would give the son and daughter of a poor man a loan to go away to study for 3 or 4 years. You had to come from a certain class. That is the reality that everywhere led to the build-out of development banks, instrument of public policy. And then the member who should know better comes and he tried to drag down the bank, drag down the persons who are involved, drag down the people who are involved in the peace program. Mr. Speaker, he then went on to the matter and he said, well, the only explanation while the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, wants to borrow is because no money there. And he said, well, people, I say, the money done. No money there. Before he came to the Parliament, I did report that we do have some money, but we are not spending it like a drunken sailor. You see, when crisis comes, as invariably it will come at some point in time, our first response must be ourselves. We must have something, however small, to be able to respond. Because it will take you time to find a neighbor, to find a friend who is willing to lend you. It will take you time in the context of a pandemic to find somebody willing to lend. Over the last 9 months, this government has been carrying on and we haven't borrowed 1 cent. 1 cent. We went to our reserves. So when the member opposite says, and you could see he relished the idea that no money there, that falsehood in his head. He said, the money done. I want to say, no, this is a far different situation to his situation respectively. And he ended on a note of pretending to be a statesman, that he has been through several crises and this is how he did it. You did it the bad way, sir, and therefore we can't learn from your example. We understand when there is no money in the country. We understand there are sure signs. We had 2 VAT days. And if you see what people were buying, you know somehow money there. We know money in the country. Not all of us have it, but a lot of people have it. but people will choose to spend at their own option, and it is theirs, Mr. Speaker. When no money was there in 2010, what was his experience? He imposed VAT and food and medicine, educational supplies, and even tax the dead people then with their funerals. 17%. Taxing in life and in death. No money was there then. When no money was there in 2010, the water bills went up 600%. When no money was there under the Douglas administration, electricity bills went up 85%. I recall at a town hall in Kayard, Mr. Speaker, we had a meeting and he was there and doing the usual Douglas drama. And then he said, I want you all to come on the street for Labor Day. He was the best at these kind of brinksmanship, you know. In his good day, he was good. In his bad day, he very bad. That is what it is. It's always an extreme. He said, let us go and march to bring down the electricity bill. I didn't know it was so high. How could it be? We have to march to bring down the electricity bill. And somebody in the crowd, a lady from Lodge Village named Joan Mitchell, became famous. She got up, she said, Dr. Douglas, you think we all fooled then, no? What march you tell her we come march? And you carry up the electricity bill, so bring them down, you don't need no march for that. It was a response. You carried up the electricity bill, so bring it back down. He doesn't need a march. Imagine, he heads the government. Skelec then, I don't even think Skelec was yet in, was a government entity. And he's saying, come and march to bring down the electricity bill that he had taken up 85%. What manner of man is this? And it took a strong woman, she's here in the parliament, Joan Mitchell, to stand up to him, one of his strongest supporters. And Joan said, no, you are not going to make me no puppy show. You must bring it back down, just as you take it up. We don't need no march for that. When no money there, that was what you did. When no money was there and there was no pandemic, you sent home hundreds of employees from Scottsboro. When no money was there and there was no pandemic, you closed the SSMC and sent thousands of people to work. When no money was there, you forced the civil servants out under the guise of natural attrition. When no money was there, the Josephine Farnes Hospital was a basket case, had become irrelevant to quality health care. Prescriptions, when you go, the patients are waiting for you to come, to go out to Valdemart, go down to some other pharmacy to get them filled. Nothing at JNF Hospital. And that is why it was so disappointing when the member for number one started going down that road to nowhere with regard to circumstances at the JNF, far much better than it ever had been under Douglas Labour. No money there, no prescriptions at our dispensaries, at the JNF or any of the other institutions. No money there. That's how you dealt with things. Look at it. 9 months we carrying the burden of the country. Not one civil servant sent home. Not one police officer. Not one nurse. Indeed, in February this year, we paid nurses, well, probably around May, Senator Phipps. In May, we paid them retroactive over $1 million+ to regularize their status. And that was a pandemic. If we needed a reason, we had one for not paying. But we honored our commitment and ensured that there was justice. I promised the country that we will always guard the public purse properly. We will not spend what we do not have. And clearly, Mr. Speaker, whenever we are incurring debt, we will ensure we get it at the best possible rate in the market. Mr. Speaker, how could the member for number 6 be the cheerleader to talk about debt and fiscal management of a country when he failed at it year after year? I have here the reports from the Director of Audit. It's a long time he practicing to do things badly and he wouldn't listen. Director of Audit report. And we have the data here. This one is 2005. But use this one to show how far back. And on page 11, he gave us a sense of how the Douglas administration was leading the country. In 1995, we went into an overall annual deficit of $30.5 million. In 1996, $34.9 million in the red. In 97, $7.3 million in the red. In 1998, $28.98 million in the red. In 1999, $32.66 million. In 2000, $96.9 million. Drunken sailor mentality. Spend, spend, spend. 2020 was the election year. He told me that he preferred to bankrupt the country than allow the opposition to form the government. And that is why the deficit ballooned to $96.9 million. And when I said, but when we win, what happens? He said, they're going to tax them. It's their money. It's them to spend it on. Why you worry about that? Let's win the elections. 2001, 10.2 million. 2002, 69.9 million in the red. 2003, $66.5 million. 2004, an election year, $104.8 million in the red. Deficit. 2005, Adrian Adam to heart. $125.6 million in the red. Legacy. Bad spending. Bad management. Like a drunken sailorman. He spent until everything crashed. Everything crashed in 2011 when he had to go to the IMF to borrow $225 million to pay civil servants, to buy toilet paper for the hospital. Never in our history had we had to go so far. 2006, $58.96 million in the red. 2007, $54.07 in the red. 2008, a change in the Ministry of Finance. He asked me to help him out. I became the Minister of Finance and I returned $131.51 million in surplus because I know how to manage. 2009, $146.9 million of surplus. So when he asks him, How come me I get surplus after surplus? I mean this. I did it for you. I did it for you. From 1995 to 2007, you took the country deficit after deficit, over $500 million of deficit. And in 1 year, I created a miracle to help you. $131.51 million surplus. You didn't say creative accounting then. You were so glad for the reprieve. 2009, a further surplus, up it a notch, $146.9 million in surplus. If I could do that for you, imagine how much better I will do for my administration. And that is why from 2015 to this point in time, every budget we have presented have returned a surplus. Because we know how to do it. It's in my DNA. And after I had done so well, he became a little anxious. Jeffrey, if you're doing too well, he can get anxious, my good friend. And what he did, he said, you know, I think I would like to make a change in the portfolio table. Take it back. And you know, he had no lucky, you know. In 2010, we gone back in deficit. $10.45 million in deficit. That's the legacy of Denzel Douglas. When the member for number 6, left office in 2014, he left behind a public debt of $1.6 billion. That's $1,600 million the country owed people. And then he comes in the parliament with the brass face to say, you know, I had left $900 million. I never heard him say that until he came in parliament. He always used some way out figures. $900 million. I mean, it's an untruth. But even for a moment, for the point of argument, let's grant that he left $900 million. Not true. But give him that just for the purposes of the argument. You left 900 million and you left a debt of 1.6. You left me in the hole. You better you didn't left nothing for me. That is the point. $1.6 billion. $1,600 million in debt. And he comes to say, you left 900. So who going to pay off the other $700 million that you left there? From your bad record that just went through year after year, year after year. And when I begin to turn things around, you say, give you back the Ministry of Finance to mash up again. That is how the music played, Mr. Speaker. So that is that story. But his story is a little bit more complex than that. I have here in my hand the medium-term debt management strategy, 2013 to 2015. I have in my hand the minute paper from the Financial Secretary Act in the 24th of February 2015. I had asked her to give me a sense of where the country was in terms of the financing. He said, I wish to advise that based on the recent data, as at 31st December 2014, the external debt was $766.07 million. All that is saying people abroad, Douglas owed. $766.07 million. And right here, he owed entities, businesses, and individuals $997.64, nearly $1,000 million. He owed people here. What he left couldn't pay these people off. The total public debt is $1,766.71 million. This is corroborated in the report from the ministry under his watch, dated December 2012. Can this man come back to ruin the finances of the country again after we have been doing such a fantastic job? $1.6 billion in indebtedness. And when he spoke the untruth, I called the Accountant General. I said, Mr. Accountant General, are you paying attention to what the ex-Prime Minister is saying? Did you hear him told a big untruth? That's the parliamentary language for lie. We don't say lie in here. We say untruth. And he said, no, I'm telling you what not to say. I'm not saying it. I'm guiding, especially members of the public. I see the shape of someone's mouth out there, and I know they were going to say it's a lie, but that would be unparliamentary. And I asked the Accountant General. He didn't know what the member for number 6 is talking about. Never happened. Never happened. And yet he comes into the parliament without regard for truth. Without regard for truth. And then the senator opposite, she comes and she said she wants a truth initiative. Look to your left for a truth initiative. Look to the member for number 6 for truth and reconciliation. Coming here with fancy words I just learned in a school and figure that people out there don't understand, that they don't have no substance. But truth initiative. When the man sitting next to you, the honorable member, is telling such a great untruth, forcing the public servants who have served him faithfully as they ought to bow their head in shame at the extreme to which he will go to score political points. Never happened under his watch. And I hope he will never again repeat that untruth. But there is another part, an interesting part to the story of indebtedness. Because in this $1,600 million of debt he left, like an albatross around the neck of the country of St. Kitts and Nevis, we left out another nearly $1 billion in the Land Peninsula. That was put away. That had suddenly become no more. And now we have to be paying for it. $776 billion he put away. Take it off the books. Hide it. That is why he was able, in one of the debates, to tell the member for number 8, don't ask me about that. That is a private matter. You remember, member? A private matter. I will not answer anything on SIDF. Go to the board. Technically right and morally wrong. Morally wrong, Mr. Speaker. So $776 million taken from the balance sheet. And since we came to office, I have had to pay over $2 $100 million to carry down that debt that he had put away, because it is still there. The citizens, he was getting another nearly $1 billion. We did that to bring back to the people of St. Kitts what we promised them, to redeem the land that he had put away under the falsehood that the debt now gone, because the issue of the national debt had become a worrying matter in the political marketplace. Okay, Mr. Speaker, the good side of the member for number 6, wrestling with his bad side, and the bad side always win. Something is significant about that. Because he comes to tell us about the CBI program.
First of all,
the CBI program which he said we killed.
First of all, I'm a Christian.
He's a Christian. Mr. Speaker, the true story of the CBI program was that in 2014 he left it comatose. He left it in ICU. That's how he left it. Near dead. But this Team Unity administration rescued it and gave it fresh and new life. That is why we could still be discussing it. In May of 2014, the program got a near deadly blow when the FinCEN Advisory told us that the US government had lost all confidence in the leadership of the member for number 6. In November 2014, he run gone. He'll come back. In November of 2014, the Canadian government told us they had no respect for Denzel Douglas. And as a result of it, all of us had to suffer. No longer will we get visa-free access to Canada. Going to Canada, save and accept for the price, was like going to Nevis, going to Antigua. Nobody asks you for visas on arrival. Now Tutmoon and Sam, but I too have to get a visa. All because of the problems of dishonesty, of lack of transparency, which Douglas, the member for number 6, presided over. And then, he should be the last. When I came in, John Giuliani, over at what we call Jacta, told me that the former Prime Minister had invited him to go to Dominica with him to invest in the CBI program there. He told me that, Mr. Speaker. And you ask yourself, a country that has been so good to you, why would you want your nationals to leave their country to go to a next countryman to invest in that country and leave yours poorer than it would be? That is the nature. Later on, we understand. I spoke to Giuliani. I got Giuliani to invest millions in a plaza over there. I spoke to him. Ambassador Michael Powell spoke to him, because I recognize Giuliani's and Ambassador Powell still remain in good friendship. And I explained to Ambassador Powell what mischief the opposition leader seemingly was doing, trying to woo away the investment opportunities of St. Kitts and Nevis. In my view, for a strange land, lo and behold, we discovered that the member for number 6 had in his pocket a diplomatic passport for the Commonwealth of Dominica. And then everything made sense. John Giuliani come to Dominica, invest in Dominica. I am a diplomat for the Commonwealth of Dominica. That is what my diplomatic passport says.
I rise on a point of order because the member is misleading the House with regard to comments or any action on my part in inviting people to go to Dominica from St. Kitts to invest. That is not true.
It is.
And it has to be withdrawn. Again, I ask, Mr. Speaker, that has to be withdrawn. That is not true.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for number 7, the member
Mr. Speaker, I merely reported what was told to me.
Yes.
By Mr. John Giuliani.
Yes,
If that is not
but
his recollection, that is a truthful statement reported to me.
Allow me to adjudicate on that point of
Yes.
order. Honourable Member for
Can't tell me what the
number...
man said to me.
Honourable Member for number 6, the presenter has indicated that what someone said to him, and so you are not in a position to speak to what someone said to him. I would allow you to simply rise and indicate that you did not have that conversation with the gentleman, but I can't ask him to withdraw what he's indicating someone said to him. I think that should be fair and reasonable.
So, Mr. Speaker, again,
Yes.
I emphasize, I've had no such conversation. I have asked no one to invest in another country from St. Kitts and Nevis. That is untrue. And I want to make that absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker. And I think that the member for number 7 is deliberately misleading the House. I really think so.
Okay, Honourable Member for number 6, again, you went well in what you said, but in terms of extending it to say that the member is misleading.
That's what I think, as I said. That's what I think, but there's no evidence on my part for that.
Okay, let's continue. I think both members have given their version. Let's continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would remind the public. Thank you, Madam Clerk, that I made that report to Parliament before now.
Not in my presence, Mr. Speaker.
Well,
Not in my presence. With respect.
But
Not
why are you
in my
getting up
presence.
Why are you getting up and
Honourable
down
members,
against
honourable
the Speaker of
members,
School?
honourable members, I don't think, order, I don't think we need to belabor the point. I've given both members a fair chance to give their version. Let's move on, please.
Mr. Speaker, we move on. So, Mr. Speaker, I am also aware that the member for number 6 took the database of the Citizenship by Investment Program to Antigua and engaged the government of Antigua with respect to
I
that,
rise
Mr.
on the
Speaker.
point of order. I have done no such thing. In fact,
Yes,
I never had the database of this country's
You did.
citizenship program. Never did. It is not my business to have such a database.
but you took it.
And so the member is not only misleading, he is telling falsehood in this House.
Not true.
Falsehood in this House. You can defend your budget, you can wrap up, but do not mislead this House in the process. Don't do that.
I wouldn't.
Thank
Speak
you.
like a man who can defend your
Honourable
budget.
member, you've made your point. Thank
That's
you.
what you need to do.
Let's
Mr.
move on.
Speaker, the truth of the thing, to have fire to its tail, I heard my grandmother said before, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the member for number 6 would deny that he has interest in a CBI project in Dominica owned and managed by Anthony Hayden.
Mr. Speaker, again, I rise at a point of order. I have no interest in
Honourable
any
member,
project
yeah.
in Dominica.
Let me-
He is misleading the
Honourable
House
member.
deliberately.
Honourable member, please. Permit me, I will allow you to speak.
Please.
There is reaction from the gallery. Please, not tolerated. Honourable member for number 6, continue, please.
I was saying, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite, number 7, who is wrapping up this debate on the budget, is misleading the House. He just said a moment ago that I have an interest in a project that is taking place in Dominica. It is not true. Never did, not interested, and never had an interest. Simple as that. Again, I said, Mr. Speaker, if the member is going to wrap up his budget debate, then he must not yield to falsehoods and to misleading this House.
I wouldn't do that.
That's what you're doing,
No.
clearly.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
That's what you're doing.
I'll show you.
If you have facts, speak of facts.
Thank you.
The
Falsehoods.
evidence.
Let's continue, please.
Bring me evidence. Bring it. Let him see.
Order.
Let the speaker see the evidence.
Mr. Speaker, well, I shall not go there this time. I will spare you.
Spare me.
Except you will admit that Anthony Hayden secured for you a special immigrant status in Dubai as a
Mr.
result
Speaker,
of your connection with him.
Again,
You
I
will
rise
admit
on a
that,
point
Mr.
of
Speaker.
order. I rise on a
Part
point
of
of
the
order.
arrangement to betray your country.
Neither sought nor provided me with any immigrant status in Dubai. Never did, Mr. Speaker. That is a falsehood again.
Okay, thank you, Honourable Member, for number 6. Honourable Member for number 7, in the last few minutes of your presentation, you're making some very direct and what I believe is referred to as statements of fact.
Truth, of
So,
fact.
in that case,
I will unravel all of this.
No, I would advise though, yes, I would advise, I would have to agree. I would have to agree, order, I would have to agree with Honourable Member for number 6 that if you're going to do that, then of course the chair would need to see some documentary evidence of those statements
Mr.
of fact.
Speaker, that would be revealed. Mr. Speaker, we had in this Parliament too the very behavior of the member for number 6 when I had risen in the Parliament, when I stood up to announce to the country that he was a holder of a diplomatic passport to Dominica. You denied it too.
Speaker, never denied that I held a passport. Never denied. I denied that I was a citizen of Dominica, and I continue to insist on that. Never denied I had a passport. I said I was never a citizen, and I still insist on that.
You are the best.
Never denied that I had a passport for Dominica. Never ever denied. I denied in this House when the Attorney General was purporting that I was a citizen of Dominica. And I still deny that.
Thank you. Let's continue.
Mr. Speaker, you see why they will have trouble over there? Because you see, the member for number 6 operates on the assumption that he can make a falsehood true. The member for number 6 repeatedly told the country, "That's not my passport." And when he was caught,
As often as I have to rise to sustain what is truth, especially pertaining to me, I will rise. I never told the country I didn't have a passport for Dominica. Again, I always insisted I am not a citizen of Dominica. I say it again here in this House.
Okay, thank you, Honourable Member for number 6. And on that note, gentlemen, as the chair, I do see a distinction between whether someone has a passport or someone said he is a citizen. And so, unless I can be provided with some evidence that the member for number 6 said that he never had a passport, and what he said was he was not a citizen of Dominica. Again, I see the distinction, so I believe we can move on.